So, how exactly did Lost in Space get made? Let's find out. Movies,
music, and monsters.
Hey guys, Dan Monroe here from Media Master Design, where we talk about movies, music, and monsters. So, Lost in Space ran from 1965 to 1968, but Irwin Allen was already thinking about a space adventure as early as 1962. He actually had a movie planned for 1962 called Passage to the End of Space. However, that never happened, but for a very good reason. 20th Century Fox had recently released a big movie called Cleopatra, and they dumped a ton of money into this movie, and it bombed. So the heads of Fox said, that's it, no more big budget movies. And that's the real reason why Lost in Space ended up on TV. But by 1964, Irwin Allen was hooked on TV anyway, so the project of Lost in Space began. Hot off the heels of his first very successful TV show, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Irwin Allen set out to write a 7-page treatment called Space Family Robinson. Now, in 1962, there was a Gold Key comic book series called Space Family Robinson, but it had nothing whatsoever to do with the TV show, and there was no tie-ins whatsoever to Irwin Allen's production. So, Irwin Allen pitched his idea for his Swiss Family Robinson in Space idea, and on December 8th, 1964, CBS announced that they had ordered a pilot for Lost in Space. Now, this unaired pilot was called No Place to Hide, and the ship wasn't called the Jupiter 2, it was called the Gemini 12. Why? Because June 12th was Irwin Allen's birthday, Gemini 12. Since this was a pilot, they didn't have any original music for it, but they did use music from The Day the Earth Stood Still, Journey to the Center of the Earth, and surprisingly, Miracle on 34th Street. The pilot was filmed in black and white and was the most expensive TV pilot ever filmed to that point, coming in at almost $700,000. A full-scale Gemini 12 mock-up interior and exterior was created. At this point, there was no lower deck to the ship at all. That wasn't added until the show got picked up for series. An incredible full-size chariot was constructed from a 1964 Snowcat Sprite. Fox actually had a couple of these lying around for a movie starring Doris Day called Caprice, so they took one of them and turned it into the chariot. Now, the very first footage that was ever filmed for the Lost in Space pilot was not the actors, it was the second unit stuff. The Gemini 12 crashing in Red Rock Canyon, and all the stuff with the chariot, the giant, and the jetpack was filmed at the Trona Pinnacles. Even though the show was in black and white, Irwin Allen decided to shoot all of this second unit stuff in color, which was really smart, and you see a lot of this footage show up in a lot of the shows in all 3 seasons. And on January 6th, 1965, principal photography began with the cast. Basically, it was all the characters that we ended up knowing and loving. John and Maureen, Pilot Don, and the kids, Will, Penny, and Judy.
Hello, Aaron.
How are you?
Okay.
We've got you here today to talk a little bit about a new project of ours called Lost in Space. I imagine you've heard something about it.
I certainly have.
Good things, I trust?
Yes.
Now keep in mind, in the pilot, there was no robot, and there was no Dr. Smith. However, and this is really cool, in the very early write-ups for this Lost in Space pilot, there actually was a robot. It wasn't a major character, and it was kind of just there for emergencies, and it really didn't do much, so they decided to drop the idea. But believe me, they added him back in later. We'll get to that. Guy Williams was hot off his success as Zorro. June Lockhart was America's Mom on Lassie. Angela Cartwright started in Make Room for Daddy and was fresh off of The Sound of Music. Marta Kristen had done a ton of movies and commercials. Mark Goddard was in Johnny Ringo and the Detectives. And Billy Mooney was one of the busiest child actors out there. Scared the heck out of everybody, wishing them into cornfields on the Twilight Zone, I can tell you that. Kind of funny, Mark Goddard initially didn't want to do the show. He read the script and he said, This is Saturday morning cereal stuff. I don't want to do this. But his agent said, oh, just do the pilot. Take the money and run. This show will never go anywhere. Wrong. On March 31st, 1965, the show was locked into the fall schedule for Wednesday nights at 7:30.
From the world of tomorrow comes a thrilling new television series, Lost in Space. Here are the amazing adventures of a group of space pioneers marooned on an uncharted planet. Adventure as challenging as tomorrow, as far out as the stars. Spectacle beyond imagination as the astronauts struggle for survival in a strange new world where incredible dangers seem to wait at every turn. Intriguing, thrilling, challenging. These are the adventures you'll share. Lost in Space.
However, the CBS executives thought something was missing. They thought that the Robinsons just dealing with different aliens week after week might be a little boring, so they decided to add a couple of very important elements. They added our beloved environmental control robot, and they added Dr. Zachary Smith. Oh dear, oh dear. A story editor named Tony Wilson came up with kind of a Long John Silver type character. A treacherous hitchhiking character who originally had a really bizarre, exotic name. But Irwin Allen said, nope, keep it simple. So they called him Dr. Smith, who ended up being a special guest star every week. Since Jonathan's character was added at the end and Jonathan himself was hired last, Jonathan was not comfortable being last.
He told me when I first was meeting with him that the pilot had been shot without me because the character didn't exist. He said, I know where you're going. We've already done the pilot. You were not in it. Your character was not in it. May we discuss billing? Billing. Everybody's billed. Everybody's billed. It's already contracted in the contracts. You'll have to be last.
If I had to do the series, I would have to be last. Last? Let me see now. Last. Well, if it could be some sort of special last, that might do it.
So he came up with the idea of being special guest star every week. That's how that happened. By this time, they needed music. And who better to get than the incomparable John Williams? Only 33 years old at the time, he was known as Johnny Williams. He not only did the incredible theme music for the first and third seasons, but also the entire score for the first episode. John Williams ended up doing okay, I think. Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, yeah, he's all right. Now that Smith and the robot were on board, the editors did something very clever. They took all the footage from the pilot, and then they shot new footage with Smith and the robot, and they edited it together into the first 5 episodes of the series. That way, all the footage from the pilot wasn't wasted. And on September 15th, 1965, the first Lost in Space episode, The Reluctant Stowaway, aired on CBS. The show was hailed by critics as an amazing adventure and roller coaster ride of story and special effects, which launches us into the first season of Lost in Space. But that, my friends, is the topic of a different video. So I hope you enjoyed that little retrospect on how Lost in Space got started. If you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them. Once again, thank you, and stop on back so we can continue talking about movies, music, and monsters. Movies,
Music and monsters.